Kimberly Schlapman. Welcome back to Biscuits and Jam.
I love being here with you, Sid. This is pretty much where, if I could live inside Southern living, that's where I would prefer. I think that's going to be what my heaven looks like. So I'm really happy to be here with you again. The last time I was with you, I was up in a tiny little space upstairs because COVID had just taken over all of us, and we were all scared, and it was a different time. So I'm glad for the freedom of today.
I know it was. It was 4 years ago, like spring of 2020. And what a strange time. It's nice to be on the other side of it.
Yes, it is.
So I'm reaching you at your house. You're at your house in Nashville?
My house in Nashville. Yeah, this is our little home. This is the kitchen that the song Pontoon built.
Oh. And
so my husband and I, we've been in this house for 18 years. And when we first moved here, when we drove up the driveway, we knew this was our home. But there were things that we also knew we were going to have to change because the kitchen was like this big. And I like a big kitchen. And so this space back here used to be Mama and Pawpaw and Grandmother's room. And it had a bathroom back there. And then when we were able, right after Pontoon hit, we tore down the walls and made a big old kitchen back here.
I love that we are looking at you in your kitchen. I mean, how often do you get to cook these days?
Oh, not as much as I would like, but as often as I can. I'll tell you that. I was able to cook yesterday. I cooked some goodies for a friend, and I cooked supper for my family. And so I cook as often as I can. But when we're on the road, busy, I don't get to cook nearly as often as I like to.
Well, you seem like you're busy all the time and just on the road and on the go and on the run all the time. So I know that you love being home and having a minute to actually, do a little cooking.
Yeah, I'm a home girl, so I love being home.
I know you. I know you are. And I've seen some videos every now and then that you'll post with your daughters, doing a little cooking segment. And I love that, you're kind of teaching them to cook and showing them the ropes. Has that been a fun thing for y'all to work on together?
Oh, I love it so much. When my older daughter, Daisy, was about 3, she started coming up with her own recipes, and they were terrible. They were awful. But my sweet husband always tasted them. And then as she grew to 4 and 5 years old, she realized that if she added more baking soda or baking powder, things would just puff up and they would look better. They would not taste better, but they would look better. And so then she would just add gobs of baking soda to whatever she was cooking. Bacon, she would always bake. And oh man, it was awful. And I would fake try it, and now she knows this. She's actually upstairs, so she hears me. She knows that I would fake try it, but my sweet husband always tried it. He literally ate it every time. But now she's an incredible cook. And now so Dolly doesn't make up recipes like Daisy always did, but she sits on the counter and sticks her fingers in everything so that she can taste it, or she just opens a box of sugar and pours it into a recipe. But I love the time in the kitchen with my girls. I grew up with my mama in our kitchen and with my grandmothers, and the memories that I have are precious.
Well, Daisy sounds like my kind of cook that she likes to kind of sample as she goes.
Yeah, she does.
So, Kimberly, you're so busy all the time, and you get, a little bit of time to cook. And, I'm just wondering what cooking means to you as kind of a creative outlet. You're pouring so much of your creative energy into performing and into songwriting. But this is a completely different thing. What does that mean to you?
It is. But yet you're right. It still is creative. And I love taking a recipe that I've known forever. Like, for instance, recently I took a recipe that my grandmother always used to cook. And I changed it a little bit, and I added a different kind. It was a cobbler, and so I added, she always made it a strawberry cobbler. And so I was like, how could I change that a little bit and make it a little different, not necessarily better, but a little bit different. So I thought, what if we combined lemon and blueberry together with some lemon zest and a little bit of lemon juice and some blueberries? How would that do? So I love to experiment on things that that I've known for years, that recipes that I've had for years. I love to experiment and see what I can come up with, and sometimes it's successful and sometimes it is not.
Yeah, well, that's why it's called an experiment.
Yeah, that's right.
Kimberly, how much of this, interest in cooking came from your mom directly? I mean, I know you've talked, I remember you talking about how you had kind of a pretend cooking show. And you used to kind of pretend that you were on TV or on a camera and, talking about what you were making. And that, I think, started pretty young, but, some of that must have come from your mom.
Oh, it absolutely did. My earliest memories are with my mama in the kitchen, and she would let me help her make biscuits. And she'd let me pour the milk in, and she'd be had her fingers all in the flour and the butter, and she would be squishing it together, and she would let me pour the milk. And I remember it like it's yesterday. And she would say, "Okay, go." More. Whoa, 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 whoa. And she would, like, if I started doing too much, she makes the best biscuits. And she can't really write the recipe down because it's just a feel. And she knows when the milk needs to stop, and she knows when to add more milk and all that. But yes, they're definitely my sweetest memories in the kitchen are with my mama, and also my grandmothers and my great-grandmothers. They died, both of my great-grandmothers died when I was fairly young, but I still have so many precious memories in the kitchen with them. Like my one grandmother, Granny Bramlett, she lived in a little trailer beside my aunt's house, and she made tea cakes. And now that tea cake recipe my mother has perfected and handed down. But she always had tea cakes. And also at her house, like when she would serve Sunday dinner, we called it Sunday dinner, but it happened at noon or right after church. She'd have everything on the table and all the pots and the pans and all the dishes. And then she'd take a tablecloth and lay it over that little table in her little tiny trailer. And it was like a thin tablecloth, and she laid it all over that. And then 5 hours later, when it was time for supper, we just lift the tablecloth off and eat the food again. And I have such vivid memories of that. And then my other great-grandmother, Grandma Burrell, her kids they had a farm, and so her husband was a farmer, and she would make 40 biscuits a day just for her kids. So because they would work out in the field, and then they'd come in and she'd feed them biscuits. And I remember her biscuits were phenomenal. And then my mother, of course, also perfected that recipe, and those are her biscuits and my biscuits today.
I mean, that's so great that you actually got to know your great grandparents a little bit. Not everybody has that, and what a cool thing. And everybody, I guess, was sort of in the same neck of the woods in Georgia growing up, right? None of them were too far.
No, everybody was probably in a 5-mile radius. We lived right next door to my mother's parents. And just for a quick story about them, my grandmother grew up in Hollywood, California, and my papa was a dirt poor Georgia boy. And they met when he was in the service. They met at a dime store she was working at. And he said to his Army buddy, he's like, "That's the girl I'm going to marry." And he went up to her and started talking to her. And she tells the story. They're both in heaven now, but she tells the story about falling in love with his Southern accent. And so they started going out on dates. And actually, when he met her, that first time he met her, he went AWOL for 4 days. He totally disappeared for 4 days because he was so in love with this woman. And luckily, his superior officer gave him a little grace, and he didn't get in
Gave
trouble,
him a pass.
He gave him a pass.
I mean, this makes a lot of sense to me that your grandparents you've got a little bit of Hollywood and a little bit of country. This makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I feel like I got my little glitz and glamour side, my high heel shoes, and my jewelry addiction and all that from my grandmother who grew up in California for sure.
Kimberly, where did the musical ability come from? I mean, obviously, who knows where these things come from, but in your family, was it your mom? Was it your dad? Was there, a grandparent who was really musical, or the whole family?
Well, there was a grandparent. My daddy's daddy was in a gospel quartet. I never got to hear that because he was not still doing that after I was born. But both of my family, both sides are musical. My daddy has a beautiful voice. My sister and my brother sing also beautifully. My mother's side, my mother played organ in the church for over 50 years. And so she's very musical
Oh,
too.
wow.
She doesn't sing, but she's very musical. And so I kind of had it coming from both sides. And I remember there's not a time that I don't remember singing. I grew up singing in the church. We were at the church every time the doors were open. I just remember singing as a little kid. I guess the first time I remember being in front of people would be singing with my daddy in the church, our little small country church. And we sang together a lot. And then when my sister came along and she got a little bit older, the three of us started singing together. And my daddy also plays any instrument that he picks up. He can play the banjo and the mandolin and all those stringed instruments. And our family just was surrounded by music always.
That's amazing. I mean, you've just had it all over the place. What a great thing. You mentioned the church, and I'm wondering. You said it was a small country church, so take me in there for a minute. Like, what does it look like when you walk in the front doors? Is it kind of, is it rural? Where is it? What does it look like?
It's called Demorest Baptist Church, and it still stands. It's been there probably 100 years, right in the middle of Demorest, Georgia. I grew up going to Demorest Church and Demorest School, where my mother taught, but we lived in Cornelia. But it was like this far apart. They're very close little towns. And when you walk in the front door of the church, it's a traditional white, beautiful church with a gorgeous steeple on top. It's got brick stairs as you walk up to the front door, and you walk in and you see these beautiful stained glass windows up in the baptismal, and stained glass on each side on the windows, and the church pews, which have they were probably replaced 15 years ago or something, but I got one.
That's
sold them
great.
to whoever was interested. And so I have one of our old church pews, just wooden, plain old church pew over in my music room. And it is a treasure. And I will take that thing with me wherever I go, because I remember sitting on those really hard benches. I remember being in church when there was no air conditioning, because when I was a little bit older, we raised money and bought air conditioners for the church. But I remember sitting in there in that hot Georgia sun with it beaming in the sides, both sides of the church, being so hot, and sitting on those hard pews. But I think about that now, but when it was happening, I didn't know any different, And so I was just in church and doing what I was supposed to be doing in church. But also, my mother played organ forever and ever, and I started playing piano in the church when I was 11 years old, because our church pianist left to go to a different church, and there was no piano player in the whole little tiny church. And so
You got drafted.
I got drafted. And I literally banged out those hymns, and it was not good. It was not good for so long. But I practiced a lot, and I became a pretty good piano player. But they were like, who can play piano? Well, Kim takes lessons, so let's put her at the piano. So, but as I look back, the memories I have of watching my mama on the organ and me being on the piano straight across from each other, across like where the preacher preached on the podium, what a treasure those moments are.
Was there one hymn that, kind of stands out for you, or something that you kind of latched on to in particular, or that you kind of maybe became known for a little bit in the church?
I loved Amy Grant at the time. I sang a lot of Amy Grant stuff. My Father's Eyes was a song, maybe the first song I ever sang and played in church. I was probably early in high school. I had finally gotten good enough to sing and play at the same time. And so I feel like My Father's Eyes was probably the first song I ever sang and played. But my mama and I would work up hymns together for the special music, that comes about 3/4 of the way down in the bulletin on a Southern Baptist church. And we would work up hymns together like, Amazing Grace, or Just As I Am, or I have the hymnals at my piano in the music room now. And sometimes when I have the time, which is not very often, or when I just need a little bit of comfort, I'll sit down at the piano, and these days I have to put my glasses on to be able to read the notes. But I sit down and play, and it just takes me back. And those hymns are such a comfort to me. And then it just makes me think of my mama and growing up. And
When you need a little grounding, you can always go back to that.
that's right, for sure.
So, Kimberly, I don't think we got to talk about this last time, but when you went to college, I'm just curious kind of what your trajectory was, because you were, you're already discovering your musical ability. And I mean, you must have had some interesting decisions to make about, where you were going to go to school. I know that you've spent some time at University of Tennessee, and I'm just fair warning, I'm a huge Tennessee fan, so I love that.
Great.
But tell me a little bit about your trajectory there.
In the middle between my 11th grade and my 12th grade year, I went to something in Georgia called the Governor's Honors Program, and it was down in Valdosta, Georgia at Valdosta State University. And I got chosen for the music program. So I went down there and I spent the whole summer, my first time away from home, and I loved it. I fell in love also down there, and that's a whole nother story. But I spent the summer at Valdosta State just singing and making music with all these amazing people. And I met someone who became a close friend of mine. Her name's Andrea. And Andrea told me she was going to Samford University. And I hadn't even heard of Samford at that point. So I started finding out about Samford. And I guess there were some folks in my little town who had gone to Samford, and they heard that I wanted to go there. So they called the music director at the school who led the a cappella choir there. And the a cappella choir there is like no other. It's phenomenal. And Dr. Black, who is now passed on, he called me one day on our telephone at our house in North Georgia, and he said, "Hi, I'm Dr. Black from Samford University, and I'd like for you to be in our a cappella choir if you would be interested, and can you sing a song for me?" And I remember where I was in my sister's bedroom, and I was like, "Oh my word, is this an audition?" I'd never even done an audition before. So I sang the song. He asked me to sing the hymn, "My Jesus, I Love Thee." And so I sang that hymn for him. And then he said, "I'd like to invite you to join the a cappella choir, and we have a little bit of a scholarship we can give you." And I was like, "Well, okay, I guess I'm going to Samford." And so I did. That was like during my senior year. And the next year, I went to Samford. And my first week at Samford, they have a cappella choir camp. Well, I guess it's the week before school starts. So I was on the a cappella choir camp bus going to Muscle Shoals, Alabama to do choir camp. And there was a girl sitting in front of me, a couple of girls sitting in front of me. And one of them turned around and said, "Hey, where are you from?" And I said, "I'm from Cornelia, Georgia. And my name's Kim Bramlett." And she said, "Well, my name is Karen Fairchild, and I'm also from Georgia." And I was like, "Oh, wow, okay." And we started talking about being from Georgia, and we knew some people, actually, that I had met at the Governor's Honors Program were her friends, and so we had a lot to talk about. And that was, oh my word, that was forever and ever ago. And I think about those two very young girls on that old school bus. She's in front of me, I'm up here. And I think about how, God was looking down from heaven going, oh, ladies, I have got something prepared for you one of these days. And, if you had told us, I was 17 at the time, she was 18, if you had told us what we were in for together, we wouldn't have believed it. But that was the very, very beginning of Little Big Town. And then, so I went to Samford for a couple of years, and Samford, no offense to Samford, but it was really expensive, and we just couldn't afford it. And so while I was there, I also fell in love with a law student. And he got a job at the University of Tennessee, and then we got married. After I was at Samford a couple of years, we got married, and so I finished up at the University of Tennessee. I'm a proud Vol fan, and I loved UT. I loved going there. I love, there aren't many SEC teams that I don't have some connection to and love for, but University of Georgia and the University of Tennessee are my tops.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that. I have heard that you might favor Georgia a little bit in a game, like a head-to-head game. So I don't love that,
Yeah.
but
Sorry,
but I'm glad you're a Tennessee fan.
I am
And wow.
such a Tennessee fan.
What a fateful, bus ride that you had with Karen Fairchild, and
Karen.
that's incredible. And Samford, I think, as you know, is right next door to this office. I mean, it is literally.
I know that.
I could walk over there in 5 minutes.
Yes, and I have to tell you, when I lived there and we knew that that Southern Living was right next door, I was always such a huge Southern Living fan. And back then as a kid, I was like, if I just walked in Southern Living's doors, I wonder if I could get a job, or I wonder if they would use me to do something over there just so I could get involved in that magazine. But yes, everybody knew that Southern Living was right next door.
Well, I think you had other plans in store. Well, I got to ask you real quick, Kimberly, as a Tennessee fan and a football fan in general, I know that you like to have a good tailgate every now and then. Mm-hmm. And someone walked down here the other day and shared with me a recipe that you gave us for shrimp and grits hush puppies, and they are outstanding. So,
thank you.
it was such a treat. They are so good. Is that something that you like to make whenever you have people over for like a game?
Yes, and that makes me so happy, Sid. That's a huge compliment coming from you. Thank you very much. I got the idea for shrimp and grits hush puppies from legendary restaurant here in Nashville called Puckett's. I'm sure you know all about
Sure,
Puckett's.
yeah.
And they used to have Puckett's Boathouse. And my husband and I would go on dates to Puckett's Boathouse for their shrimp and grits hush puppies. But they have closed in the last few years, and we loved those shrimp and grits hush puppies so much that we just had to keep them in our lives. So I just figured out the recipe. And we love those, yeah. And you know what I love? I think I have so many current memories as of late, as far as tailgating, on the road, because we're always on the road in the fall, on Saturdays in the fall.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things is when we park our buses in the parking lots, and we call it the bus compound. So all the buses are there in the parking lot, and some of the buses are so fancy that they have TVs that you can pull out and watch the football games. That would be because Philip and Jimmy are such diehard football fans. And so on their buses, you can open up the bay and pull out the TV. And so we'll gather chairs around, and everybody will watch the games together in the parking lot on those Saturdays. And, those are just so much fun. And if I were to have a cooking facility, I would be making those shrimp and grits hush puppies. As a matter of fact, I should do that this fall when we're out with Sugarland, because we have a little bit of I have like 2 little hot plates on my bus so you can pull out and cook a little bit on. So I'm going to do that this fall.
Yeah.
We'll make a picture for you. But I love when people get together with the same, whether we're pulling for the same team or not. Jimmy and I are rarely ever pulling for the same team because he's an Alabama fan.
Yeah.
Enough said.
Enough said.
But I just love it when everybody gets together and watches the games. And sometimes it doesn't work out for us to do it all together, but sometimes it does, and it's just really fun.
I've interviewed quite a few country artists who happen to love football, and they're always complaining about those Saturday night, games when, they have to go play a show and they have no idea what the score is. And,
Yeah, we have that a lot. And Jimmy is such an Alabama fan that, he takes it so seriously that no one better ever tell him a score until if the game has started and we have to go on stage. He hates that, but nobody better ever tell him a score, because he's going directly back to his bus where he's recorded the game to pick right back up where he left off.
Oh, he wants to see the game. He wants to find out.
He wants to see the game. Yeah. He does not want to be updated. He wants to see it for himself, and that's just a funny little thing about Jimmy, and everybody knows it, and we respect it. We're like, we know what has happened.
Don't tell him the score.
We're not going to tell Jimmy. On that Saturday in October, when UT and Alabama play,
third Saturday in October.
Yes. There were so many years that Jimmy couldn't even look me in the eye. I was like, Jimmy, we love each other. You've got to get past your Alabama thing you have and just look me in the eye. But I'm just joking, but he's very serious about Alabama football.
Well, they've had the upper hand lately. Well, Kimberly, I want to talk holidays for a second. I know that you love Christmas, and we celebrated Christmas actually together this past year at Illumination in Charleston, which was so much fun. So I know you love the holidays. Talk to me about, recipes, and when you think of Christmas, like what's a recipe that you're kind of known for in your house or that you love to make?
I grew up and we would find a Saturday every Christmas season with my grandmother Burl, who lived next door. And we would have, my mama would come and all my cousins would come and my sister, and we would all just bake, and we would bake and bake and bake and bake, and all these goodies like Georgia crackers and peanut butter balls and cookies and haystacks and all these yummy Christmas goodies. We would bake hundreds of goodies. And then my mother and my grandmother would give them out as gifts to their friends during the Christmas season. And we have kept that tradition going for the most part. There have been a few years we haven't been able to do it. But we'll go to my sister's house. It's hard to find a day when everybody can do it, but we work really hard to find a day. And then we just cook. And then we give them out to our friends for Christmas. Some of my favorite things, and I don't know if everybody calls them this, but we make Georgia crackers. We call them Georgia crackers. And they are townhouse crackers, the oval townhouse crackers, filled with peanut butter, stack it up, and then dip it in chocolate, and then let it sit and cool, and of course, and then your little sandwich cracker is called a Georgia cracker.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Sometimes we dip them in regular chocolate, milk chocolate, and sometimes we do white chocolate. They are so yummy. Sometimes we put sprinkles on top, and some we leave plain. And I think that's probably the most popular in our family, the most popular little goodie. And we have them all throughout Christmas. No matter what we're doing with each other on Christmas, there's a bowl or a platter of Georgia crackers. And they go, my sister, what she has learned to do is not put them all out at the same time, because we spend most of our Christmas with her at her house. So she'll put some out and then they'll get gone, and then she'll put some more out and they'll get gone. But we devour those. And we also leave those for Santa Claus. We eat eggnog and Georgia crackers for Santa Claus on Christmas Eve.
And I imagine Santa Claus is a big fan. Yeah.
He's a big fan of Georgia crackers, yes.
We may have to get that recipe from you.
You can have it.
Oh, I would love it. I would love it. Those are right up my alley. Well, Kimberly, I want to talk about some other music. So 2 years ago or so, 18 months ago, you had a new album come out, and it was called Mr. Sun. There's a song on there that I wanted to ask you about. It's called Three Whiskeys and the Truth. Okay. And you don't strike me as a big drinker, but I feel like you love a whiskey song. How did this one come together?
That's so funny. Yeah, I don't drink whiskey, but I really like to sing about it.
I know you do.
Karen and I love to write with these 3 women in town, and they call themselves the Love Junkies. Hillary Lindsay, Liz Rose, and Lori McKenna. And there are no 3 more talented women. I mean, they have written so many hit songs together. And they also wrote Girl Crush. That's where Girl Crush came from. And so Karen and I like to write with them whenever the opportunity presents itself. And we were writing with them one day. We don't let the boys come. It's like an all-girls, lots of estrogen, lots of, chatting. And we start out, always for some reason, eating chicken salad together, usually at Liz's house. And then a little bit farther into the afternoon, she starts popping wine. We just always have such a great time together. But one day we were writing with the Love Junkies, Karen and I, and I feel like it was Hillary who we were just, what we do when we first sit down and we just start talking life. Everybody's just talking about life. And somehow Hillary came up with, what about, I've had this title, 3 Whiskeys and the Truth. And we were like, oh, what? And so immediately we just started writing, and that song came together fairly fast because we were just so inspired by her title. And that's how that happened. And then we put it on Mr. Sun. It actually is a lot of people's favorites. It's country. The harmony is, really thick and beautiful on that one. And I'm really glad you like that one, Sid. Thank you.
Well, the whole album is great, but that one really spoke to me in particular. And yes, I do like a whiskey, but it's just a beautifully done song. And
thank you.
You can kind of listen to it over and over, and it's a great one.
Thank you so much.
Kimberly, I want to ask you about something a little bit harder. You were a part of an event in Nashville recently that was raising money to find a cure for Parkinson's disease. And you talked a little bit about your personal connection to that disease with your mom. And I'm just wondering if you could share a little bit about, her struggle with that and what you've kind of taken away from that and how you've been dealing with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking. My mother, 19 years ago, I lost my first husband. And we noticed in the midst of that, which was a horrific time for everybody, that my mother had this tremor. And we thought that she was just nervous and stressed, just like all of us were. And as the weeks and the months passed after that, that tremor didn't go away. And so she actually, and I know doctors aren't okay with this, but she kind of diagnosed herself with Parkinson's. She started reading about it and researching, and she was like, I think I have Parkinson's. So she went, of course, to a neurologist, and they confirmed that. And this was 19 years ago. And she was very active at the time. She and her best friend would walk 3 miles a day. And for about 10 years, you wouldn't have known that she had Parkinson's. She was just doing pretty much everything in life that she had ever done. She's very much like me. We're just really busy people. I realized when I had shoulder surgery recently that I'm pretty much a busybody because I just want to do. And that slowed me down a lot at the time. But my mother is the same. She's always cooking for people and taking care of people and cleaning and planting and, doing all the things. But, and so she was pretty much able to do most of that for about the first 10 years. And then for the last, I would say 5 to 7 years, she has moved to a deeper level in Parkinson's, and it has taken over her life. And the thing about Parkinson's is it's so complex. A lot of people, it's the tremors, and it's the full body tremors, and luckily, well, I don't say luck, I say thank God, there are brain surgeries now that can help with those tremors with some people, which just will change a Parkinson's patient's life. My mother, her medicine takes care of those tremors, but her main challenge is her balance, and there's something in Parkinson's called feet freezing, where your feet literally freeze to the ground and your brain says to go, but your feet cannot go. They don't talk to each other. And so then you fall. And my mother, oh, God bless her, she's broke so many bones, and she's, oh my goodness, her little body has just been beat up from this disease. And so balance is her biggest challenge. And she does therapy a lot, and she, takes all the medications that there are for Parkinson's, but there's not yet a cure. And her disease continues to progress, and her life is, nothing like it used to be. Her spirit still is, and she's such a fighter. But it has taken a lot of her life, this disease, and my daddy is her primary caregiver. And, I've learned a lot about caregivers through this, and how hard it can be on caregivers emotionally and physically. I mean, they're seeing the person that they have loved their whole lives fail, and decline. And it's really hard on the caregiver. And I have so much new respect for people in that role. And just for Parkinson's, it is such an interesting, wretched disease. Michael J. Fox, I've said, and I will say again, is an angel to families like mine. If it weren't for him and his research, his foundation, I don't think there would be nearly as many advances as there have been. And there will be a cure. We don't have it yet, but there will be a cure thanks to his foundation. But I just say to anybody out there who has a loved one who has this disease, it's hard. It's a very, very difficult journey. And I support you, and I feel you, and I appreciate you mentioning it, Sid, because I feel like the more we talk about it, the better off it is for that disease, and to find a cure for that.
I'm sorry that you're struggling with that, and that your mom is, but I also applaud you for doing what you can to make a difference, and working with them, to try and raise money, and try and make some advances against such a terrible disease. I know that there's quite a few people, even just, thinking about Nashville and the country music world, that are dealing with this on some level. And I'm wondering, are there people that you've kind of become closer to just because of a shared experience with that?
Yeah, I would say, well, there is some bit of a Parkinson's community here in Nashville. And it's like when you walk a road like this, if you can talk to someone else about what they're going through, whether you are the Parkinson's patient or you love someone who has it. I have a lot of friends who love someone who has it. Their mother has it, or their father has it, or their father-in-law has it. And when you can talk to someone like that and get and just share stories, it just makes you feel better, and it makes you realize that you're not alone. I also have friends whose parents, I feel like no one really prepared us for this point in our lives where our parents start to decline. And I've tried to get my friends to talk about it more. I knew that I would have to live without my parents one day, but I never really thought about the decline that might happen.
Right.
To get us to that point. And it's hard. And I try to talk to as many of my friends about it, because I feel like we need each other in this time. I just didn't prepare myself for this. There are so many friends in this town also who give of themselves for causes like Parkinson's. My bandmates have given so much of themselves to raise money for Parkinson's. Jason Isbell, Cheryl Crow, Brad Paisley, all these people have given of themselves to raise money for this horrible disease, and I'm forever grateful to them for that.
Yeah. I just, I have such respect for people that are taking their time and putting their energy and efforts into trying to make a difference on something like that. And you included in that. Well, on a brighter note, Kimberly, I know you must be really excited about this tour.
Yes.
You're touring with Sugarland. It's kind of incredible that you've been at this with Little Big Town for more than 25 years. you must be just so excited about that. And especially I would think working with Jennifer Nettles and going out on the road with her.
Yeah.
Is that
And I
she's
heard your
someone that you've known for a
conversation.
really long time? Oh, you did? Yeah.
Yes, I love that girl. We've known her forever, and I heard your conversation with her, and it was amazing. I loved hearing her talk about growing up and about the farm life and her grandparents and all that. That conversation, Sid, felt like I was just sitting on the couch with the two of y'all. It was incredible on both sides, incredible. But I love that girl, and I love Christian, and we were celebrating 25 years, and we started having conversations like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to tour this? How are we going to celebrate this big, huge moment for Little Big Town? And I think it was our manager that said, why don't we try to get Sugarland back together and have a tour? And then he did it. He has so much fairy dust that he uses here and there. He's very persuasive. And so he made it happen. He called him up and they were into it. And so, yeah, we're going to go out on a tour in the fall with them. And we're going to sing our own songs and we're going to collaborate a little bit. And we actually have a Phil Collins song that we worked up recently and recorded. And
I heard that.
On TV.
Yeah.
It was so fun.
It was great.
They were the first tour that my little Daisy went on. So right after Daisy was born, we went out on our first tour with Sugarland back in 2005, and Daisy was an infant. It was with Sugarland and Jake Owen. So I just have so many just warm, cozy, comfortable memories of being out with them. And they, of course, were so good to me as a brand new mama trying to figure out my way. And then we toured with them at least once more, maybe twice more. And so it's just going to feel like a homecoming being back out with them. I just can't wait. I can't wait. There's no telling. Christian is infamous for saying in an afternoon, how do y'all feel about working up a new song for tonight? And so I know that's going to happen. And one time he said, how do y'all feel about doing a Queen song tonight? And we were like, what? But we did it. We worked it up and we did it. So I'm just looking for the spontaneity that I know. I'm looking forward to that. I know it's coming.
I think a lot of people are going to be excited to celebrate that with y'all.
Please come.
I can't believe Jennifer didn't tell me that was happening, though. I should have heard a hint or two and gotten that out of her.
Well, she was probably sworn to secrecy at that time.
I'm sure.
You know how showbiz is. You're sworn to secret. You can't tell until you can tell.
Well, Kimberly, I just have one more question, and I've been asking this at the end of each episode, but the last time we talked, I did not get to ask you this. So what does it mean to you to be Southern?
My whole heart is Southern. It means love and being raised well, and it means God and family and patriotism and fun and celebrations and being loved and held well during grief. It means family and friends, and it means parties in the backyard with string lights hanging up at dusk, and it means being there with a casserole when a baby is born, and it is everything to me. And no matter where I live or where I go, I'm about to tear up because being Southern is who I am and will forever be how I'm labeled, and I'm so proud of it. And I love it when I get to show somebody what Southern really means. One of my pet peeves is when you see someone play a Southerner on TV and they have a horrible accent. I can't stand that. But when I get to show people what Southern really means and the whole truth of it and what all it encapsulates, I get so excited. It makes me so happy.
Well, few people that I know sound more Southern than you. And especially when you're saying things like lights and whites.
My little Dolly, she's always calling me out on my long eyes. Always.
Don't ever change. Well, Kimberly Schlapman, thanks so much for being back on Biscuits and Jam.
I will come. You just come calling and I'll be there, Sid. Thank you so much for having me.